I remember having my first ankle injury, and for 2 days straight, I could not walk without pain. And the little walking that I did was holding on to something for support with no weight on my ankle. Your injury may or may not be that severe, but we have a measurable rate of progression that anyone can take, so regardless of your entry point, you can start making progress and working towards long-term goals with no ankle pain in the future. So when I was injured, what I couldn't do was walk, but what I could do was start gradually moving my ankle without weight. I used two main movements. The first movement, up and down reps, which is more similar to walking or running in a straight line in daily life. And the second motion was circles to cover the rotation and side movement that may be unexpected in daily life. And a good cycle to do with the range of motion that doesn't hurt is up and down for 10 reps slowly, then circling one way for 10 reps before circling the other way for 10 full reps. Now, if you have a floss band, you can wrap it around the affected area, wrapping all the way down, then back up, which just adds some resistance because now you're fighting against the band. But whether you're using a floss band or not, I still recommend using the same flow of 10 up and down, 10 rotating one way, and then 10 rotating the other way. So that route allows us to get back up and start walking again without pain. But where do you go from there? Because I don't recommend just stopping once you're out of pain, because building more strength and ability will actually prevent future injuries from happening in the first place. So I look at the ankles in three main areas. The front of the shin is going to be the tibialis, that's part one. Then the back of the ankle is broken into two parts, both connecting to the Achilles. Part one is the gastroc, which is the bigger, bulkier muscle here. And then the soleus is the second part, which actually lies underneath the gastroc. And I've noticed that mastering ability in all three areas equally will lead to preventing future injuries from happening in the first place. So in part one, we're rebuilding the ankle without actually putting any weight on it. And then in part two, we're gonna start rebuilding the ankle now with weight on it as well, starting with the front of the ankle at the tibialis. When walking or running, every time you put your heel on the ground and lift your foot, this tibialis muscle at the front is engaged, which means to make it stronger, you have to raise your foot off the ground. The easiest entry point is just with a wall where you can put your butt on the wall. And after doing thousands of reps just like this, I can say that a wall is really all you need for full injury prevention. Because with your feet closer to this wall, this movement regresses to an easier level. And the further that you walk out, the more difficult that it gets. Now, one important tip is to keep your quads flexed and your knees fully extended while you're doing the reps, which keeps the load on the tibialis instead of cheating by extending the knees. And using shoes with tall heels will make this more difficult because there's more range of motion to lift the feet. But if you remove the shoes, you might want to use some extra padding under your heels if you have a hard floor. And while the wall version does provide progressions and regressions by how far your feet are from the wall, a tibialis bar is an optional long-term goal where you can actually get the bar, load weight onto it, so your progression is actually as measurable as any other strength movement with dumbbells, kettlebells, etc. So with that full line of progression, that's the front of the ankle covered. Now let's move on to the back of the ankle, which is 2 steps instead of 1. As a recap, the 2 back of the ankle muscles that are the most important are the gastroc, which is this big bulky calf muscle, and then the soleus, which lies under the gastroc. Now the gastroc is best trained with a straight leg, and then the soleus is best trained with a bent leg. So if you have even strength between bent leg and straight leg calf raises, you're gonna have the healthiest ankles. And since both of those muscles connect to the Achilles, which is the thickest and strongest tendon in your body, then you'll have a healthy Achilles as well. Now, both straight leg and bent leg calf raises can be trained without equipment. I'm gonna use a bumper plate, but I recommend using a wall instead because it's gonna be more sturdy. I put my hands on the wall. Now for straight leg calf raises, the further that you walk out, the harder it's gonna get, and the closer you are, the easier it's gonna get. Notice that the further that I walk out, the more of a stretch I get in my calf as well, which is a factor. And an important note is that I'm keeping my quads flexed and my knees extended just like the tibialis raises so that I'm not cheating the rep and I'm only strengthening my calf. Then for the bent leg calf raises without equipment, hands on the wall as well, bending at the knee to a good stretch through the back of the leg. See how my heel is barely off the ground? That means that I am in a full stretch. And from my knee to my shoulders is in a straight line the whole time to keep the load on the soleus and the Achilles as I do my reps. Notice how my knee is staying bent through the entire rep and it's not extending as I go up. That's important to keep the load back there. In progression for here, instead of walking further out, it's just the more knee bend that you use, the harder it's gonna get. Now for both the bent knee and the straight leg options, moving to single leg will make this even more difficult, and then adding load in your hand will make it even more difficult down the line. But if you have access to weights, then you likely have access to other equipment as well, which means you can add in a step, which gets even more of a stretch at the bottom of the rep that you can strengthen out of, and then weight as well to be added on to build strength as well. Notice at the bottom of the rep, I'm flexing my tibialis to get deeper into the stretch, just like I'm doing a tibialis raise, so that I can strengthen out of a stretch position on every single rep. And with the combination of weights and a step, you really can build up in as much weight as you want, as long as your form is staying perfect. Now for the bent leg calf raises, you can simply sit on a bench and load the front of your knee. And this can actually become easier than the bent leg calf raises on a wall because there's less load or more load depending on how much weight you actually use. But my favorite option for a long time has been using a seated calf raise machine. In my home, I don't have that option yet, but if you're at a gym, then use that seated calf raise machine so you can load it with plates, which makes it even better. Now, regardless of what movement you're doing, out of everything that we went over today and what progression you're using, all I want you to do is to find a level that doesn't cause pain and you can get a good challenge out of. And on top of that, a second principle to use for all these movements is never sacrifice worse form for more weight. If you up the weight and your form deteriorates, then go down in weight because it's not worth it and you increase the likelihood of injury. And with those two principles and all the progressions that we went over today, you can actually build your ankles to a point where it's hard to injure them. And you may have noticed that the 3 strength movements are all forward and backward based movements. Now, what happens with rotation? I recommend keeping in the ankle rotations with a floss band if you do have weaknesses in twisting your ankle. This is all a part of the route that we take in the Pain Free Ankle program, which is one of the main programs in Pain Free Online Training. So on the app, you can choose the Pain Free Ankle program, follow it day by day, exactly what it says, watch the movement tutorials to learn the movements on your own time, and have a one-to-one line of communication with me personally for coaching along the way. Moving through all the movements and their progressions becomes incredibly easy as well, because in the app you can track all of your reps, your sets, the weights used along the way as you work through the sessions. So as you go through the program and keep me posted and we're doing the coaching, you can see what you've done in the past and how much better you're getting. It's built that way because it's been my job for the past 2 years to make that service, the program, the app as easy to use as possible. And in that time, we've had over 1,000 success stories. But it remains my responsibility to continue making the app easier to use and more effective for the member based off of the member's feedback. So thank you so much to everyone in there that's giving me feedback and helping me build the app along the way. Now that's a quick summary for the end of the video, but all the information is laid out at painfreeonlinetraining.com, which is my website. And the price is just $10 a month, no long-term contracts, and everything included in that one price. There's no pressure on joining, but I'd love to see you in there. And regardless, thank you so much for the support.